it? We're recording now. So, welcome, Sally, to my afternoon tea. So, my first question to you is taking you back. Did you find school easy? And you've already told us that you lived in Germany for a bit.
Yeah, so I actually think about school from the age of 10, if I'm really honest, because that's when I went to boarding school, having had 10 schools up to that age. So did I find school easy? I think the truth is that I was given a massive why. So I began to enjoy learning because I was kind of pushed into it. So if I explain, as I say, had 10 schools by the time I was 10. And so as a result, my parents decided that they needed me to have a more stable schooling. And so looked at putting me into boarding school because my father was in the army and we traveled a lot. And in my first year, I came bottom of the class. And my dad sat me down and he said, Sally, it's very simple. If you don't come in the top 6 next term, then you will have to leave the school and go back to a state school. Now, I had no problem with being in a state school at all, but the thought of changing schools again was utterly horrible. And so I just did what I think my dad expected me to do, which was I just knuckled down and got on with studying. And as I wasn't desperately happy in school, I think it was kind of my savior, really, because I just learnt to love learning. To start with, I did it because I had to, but actually very quickly I found I really liked learning. And so, yes, I enjoyed school, I think, but I enjoyed the learning, but I wouldn't say I was desperately happy in school.
Mm-hmm. So was that an English boarding school?
Yeah.
Had you moved back to England?
Yeah.
So what age did you leave Germany then? Because you said you were in German kindergarten.
So I had 2 stints in Germany. First I left when I was about 4. So I was there from 1 till 4. And then had a whole series of postings, which ended us back in Germany when I was about 8 and a half, I think. And then back to the UK when I was 10.
Yeah. So it must have been challenging.
It was tough.
I bet it's got to be.
Yeah, I mean, some schools I was only in for 6 months.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So you did enjoy school eventually at the boarding school?
Yeah, I enjoyed the learning. And
yeah.
I enjoyed being settled.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy the school. It was for all sorts of reasons. Not least the headmistress, by the time I left, was 84.
Good grief. 84?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, was a really tough taskmaster.
Yeah.
And I think I was unlucky. I was a day girl for a term, or I became a boarder. And what that essentially meant was there were 2 camps. You were either a day girl or you were a boarder. And I slipped between 2, really, because I'd been a day girl. So therefore, the boarders weren't happy that I was a boarder. But the day girls no longer saw me as a day girl because I was now a boarder. And it really took a couple of years to kind of work that one through. And for, girls can be unbelievably nasty to each other.
Oh, yeah.
And how I coped was just to bury myself in my books.
Yeah.
So, I did not enjoy it. I also became a really keen swimmer. And we had an outdoor swimming pool. And so I used to swim every morning, then play my piano, and then crack on with, a day at school. I disliked sports other than swimming. And then, you know, after school would just study when other people maybe were sitting around listening to records or whatever. So for the first couple of years, didn't really get included. And that was fun.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what was your favourite subject at school?
You know, when you said that, when I was thinking about it, I was thinking, I'm not sure I really had one. I mean, I've always liked science. So science was definitely up there. And I could definitely tell you what was my least favourite subject, which was needlework, which I'm incredibly proud to say I got an ungraded for. In what were O-levels.
Yeah.
You know, I think we had 12 of us sharing an ironing board and a sewing machine. I mean, it was utterly ridiculous now and think of it. But, you know, so definitely needlework was the thing I hated most. I really think I loved learning. So I don't think beyond kind of saying that science and biology, you know, really fascinated me. I mean, I did love kind of English and history and yeah. So I would say not maths, not needlework, not art. But other than that, you could probably take your pick.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. And at what age did you decide that you were going to go into nursing? Was it a decision that you made when you were a youngster, or was it something that you decided to do as you grew older?
So my mum's a nurse. I think I wanted to be a nurse from quite a young age. What's very interesting is when I left school, I went to a technical college. And when I was choosing my A-levels, they did their absolute best to persuade me to go into medicine. To the point where I actually had to tell them that I'd got interviews to go and do radiography and stuff, because I couldn't say medicine because obviously it's a different kind of assessment than it was in those days. But I said, you know, radiography to get them off my back, basically. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, yes, I think nursing from a young age, and despite quite a lot of attempt to actually get me to do something what was in those days considered to be more academic, stuck with wanting to be a nurse. Yeah.
And did you specialise in any specific area of nursing?
I did quite a lot, actually. I was a ward sister on a cardiology ward in Guy's Hospital. I then started quite a long spell of about 15 years of bouncing between education and practice. So after I left being a ward sister, I'd had Emma, my daughter, and then found myself wanting something that was a bit more regular, so went into education. But then after a while was missing patients too much, so then went and got myself a job as a practice nurse, and then found I was missing my brain being stretched enough, so then went back into education, and I did that for quite some time. I've got a pattern of 3 or 4 roles like that. And then I actually had a fascinating role, which was menopause nurse specialist for East Anglia, which was a brilliant job, where I actually used to go and run women's groups. So I actually had the best of both worlds, because I was educating the GPs and the practice nurses, but I was also working with women who were getting a pretty poor deal, really, in those days, with menopause. It was at the time when HRT was, all the studies were coming out suggesting that HRT gave you heart disease. So women who'd been relying on their HRT were being told to stop it. So I was looking at not only, you know, what guidance to give them in terms of that, but also what alternative therapies were available and things. So I literally used to turn up in a hotel in Felixstowe, have no idea how many women were going to come, would find, you know, 12 or 18 women and still be there at 10 o'clock at night. And it was one of the most fascinating, you know, seat of the pants. It was the beginning of my doing stuff by the seat of my pants, I guess.
Yeah.
Because if you can do that, if you can kind of turn up and be willing to cope with whatever is thrown at you. The worst, the saddest thing I ever had was a 23-year-old who came up to me who'd just been told that she was in early menopause and had had no counselling whatsoever and was in a desperate state. So that was probably the saddest one. But, another one was a 78-year-old who came and shouted at me because she said, I've still got these hot flushes that can't possibly be menopause. And I just looked at her and I said, I'm really sorry, but it probably is. There's a small percentage of people that carry on with them for the rest of their life. You know, she practically threw the book at me. She was laughing because it was the last thing she wanted to hear. You know, you just never knew what you were going to experience. But
That's it. So with the menopause, did you suggest HRT or?
Depended on the women. I mean, they wanted, really.
Yeah.
I think at the time I was doing it, a lot of women were being told no. And I think what I said was something like, I would find someone who can explain the studies to you because they're not as clear cut as is being suggested, which of course is what has come out now when, you know, women are now allowed to have HRT because it actually doesn't have that much effect on your heart. Yeah, so it was kind of guiding people towards what to look for, really.
Okay. And do you still nurse today, or have you?
No, so I haven't nursed clinically since I worked as a lecturer in the School of Medicine in Cambridge, which I did for 10 years and left at the end of 2016. So no, I haven't worked clinically.
Okay. So when did you decide that nutrition was the best medicine? Was that with the HRT that, you know, if they stopped HRT that?
No, it was when I was a practice nurse.
Yeah.
And, basically what was happening was I was particularly working with patients with diabetes and also people who were obese. And what I found was they would come in, they would be a bit overweight. We would suggest a diet that we now know is completely the wrong thing, but we would say, you know, have a low-fat diet. Of course, if you have a low-fat diet, you're really hungry, so we would say eat more carbs, which of course now we know converts to sugar, which gets laid down in the body as fat. The body uses the little bit it needs, puts it into its muscles, and then when it's done with that, the rest it stores as fat. And so these poor people would come back, you know, 3 months later, and they'd be heavier, and they'd be more unhappy, and they'd also be extremely hungry, because the other thing that sugars do is that they make you produce insulin, and insulin is a fat storage hormone. So basically, insulin takes the sugar out of your blood and puts it, you know, either into your muscles or into your fat, but it's not available for you, so you're hungry all the time. And so they would get hungrier and hungrier. They would go away, they'd put on more weight, they'd come back, we'd say, oh, I'm really sorry, you're going to have to start some tablets now. Tablets not only would, you know, the diet would not only make them hungry now, but the tablets would also make them hungry. And then eventually we would get to the point where they had to start insulin, which makes you really hungry. So, you know, we would, and I just kind of had a patient who came in the door and said, Sally, what is going on? I'm sure I'm so much less fit than I was when I first came and started talking to you about my, you know, blood sugars and what have you. And that was a kind of trigger point for me, but I think I had been questioning things for about a year at that point, but I think that patient actually sent me on a journey. And I then went away and I found a group on diabetes.co.uk, who were a group at the time of about 47 patients who were following a low carb diet and who were doing really well, and who I'd heard about them because I'd heard the GPs, you know, tutting about this maverick group of patients and how dangerous it was what they were doing. And there's now, I don't know, something like 400,000 of them in this group. I mean, literally, it was right at the start. I remember looking at that and thinking, could we have got it that wrong, you know? And then very shortly after that, in 2012, reading the Stampede study. So this was now when I was lecturing, and was sorry, it was a couple of years afterwards when I was lecturing. And I was preparing a session for the students, and I thought, I'm just going to read a bit around this. And I read the Stampede study. And the Stampede study basically was a study that was done in the States that was patients who'd had bariatric surgery. So they hadn't touched the pancreas at all, which is the organ that produces insulin. And basically they had shown that these people who had bariatric surgery, so it's like, you know, having your stomach stapled, they not only lost their weight, they reverted their blood sugars, and they maintained it 3 years later. And I think at that point I went, oh my God, so we've just got this so wrong. And that was when I realized that if you got your diet right, everything changed. Because these guys, their lives were completely transformed by having a surgery on a part of their intestine that was nothing to do with their diabetes. So I think it was about me realizing that actually what we needed to do was get to the root cause. So the root cause wasn't the blood sugars, which is what we've been treating. The root cause was actually the fact that the sugars were increasing our body's ability to respond to insulin, or decreasing our body's ability to respond. So it was that, and then going, okay, so if low fat is not the answer, then why do we need healthy fats? And then of course starting to look at, well, of course we need healthy fats. The brain is, you know, all our cells are made of fat. All our brain cells need lots of essential fats, you know. And it was sort of going, yeah, just makes complete sense. So then it was just a passion from then on, really. It was just, I think we have most of what we need in food if we really listen to our bodies.
Yeah. That's very, very interesting. So would you recommend for people things like Slimming World, Weight Watchers, or not? Because they emphasize low fat.
I know. So I think
people lose the weight, then they stop going, and the weight starts piling back up again.
Yeah.
So then they're yo-yoing.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's fine. I mean, I for me, because I've got a weight problem, it's cutting out all the carbs. Cut out the bread, the potatoes, and the weight starts moving.
Well, it will do, because grains, potatoes, and anything with sugar get converted to sugar in the body. And basically, you know, if you've got fruit sugars, or if you've got things like sugars in things like corn oil and things like that, which is obviously used a lot in processed food to make it taste, well, that gets broken down to fructose, and the only place that fructose can be metabolized is in the liver. So then we get fatty liver.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening. You know, when people start to get a tummy, that's usually because their liver is getting fatty. You know, it's a sign. It's a really important sign. So I always say to people, I'm not interested in your BMI. I'm not interested in your weight. I'm interested in your height-weight ratio, your height-waist ratio, because that's actually the telling sign. So yes, I mean, I think that going back to what you're saying about Slimming World, I don't know so much about Weight Watchers. What I think Slimming World do incredibly well is they build a community and they have accountability. And I'm a great believer that that is part of what you need to be able to build successful habits. I struggle big time with their emphasis on low fat still. There is no evidence to support that at all. And yes, they have a point. If you eat a whole avocado, you will have too much nutrients. You know, avocados are nutrient dense. That doesn't mean to say you can't have some. And actually, they are really healthy, and they are, you know, they've got some fantastic nutrients in them. So, and the other thing that I slightly struggle with is the idea of sins, because I just think the brain will hear sin and get the wrong message.
Yeah.
I think we should be thinking about food to nourish us, and that includes having a treat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? But it's not labeling it as a sin, which I think potentially gives the wrong message.
The wrong impression, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And is one of the things that I certainly see a lot of I work with brides, and I see a lot of brides who are following Slimming World. And, they post some of the things, just had this as a sin today. And if you look at their feed, you see, 1, 2, 3, 4 examples in a few days. And I just think that's teaching the brain the wrong thing. We actually want to be teaching the brain how we can prepare really healthy but gorgeous treats.
Yeah.
And then that's the best of both worlds.
That's it. So, what made you go into lecturing?
So I said I kept bouncing between. So when I was a practice nurse, because I felt my brain wasn't being used enough, I started doing a master's. I did a master's in community nursing, and with Cambridge. And one of the modules, I was incredibly lucky. One of the modules was called Clinical Communication. It was run by Jonathan Silverman, who was kind of world-renowned at the time, of looking at how people communicate in medicine. And that wasn't about bedside manner. That was about understanding how you can have a really efficient consultation that really holds the patient when they are uncomfortable, and also enables them to tell you what they really want to say. So it was really high level work. And I did a module on that and absolutely loved it. And Jonathan then said to me, would you like to come and help out in the introductory course with medical students? I know you're in nursing education, but could you occasionally, come and do a session for us? So I said, well, I can, ask them if I could do that as kind of some extension work. And they agreed. So I started doing that, and then absolutely loved it. And sort of 6 months later, he said, if I ever had a job, would you be interested? And I said, I'd bite your hand off. And about a year later, he got in touch and said, I mentioned about that job. Well, it's going to be advertised. So, and it took another year actually, because the first time Cambridge are real snobs.
Yeah.
And the idea that somebody could do this job who didn't have an international reputation wasn't acceptable. So the first time they advertised, they rejected all 5 applicants because none of them were, worthy of the title. And then Jonathan kind of sat them down and said, look, this is a brand new field. There's probably only been going 10 years, and there's probably only, 30 people in the world that I could actually get to do this role. So then they were a bit more sensible. So it took about another year, but I did end up as a lecturer in the School of Medicine in Cambridge, something I'm immensely proud of, actually.
Yeah.
One of the very first nurses, and ended up, the first sort of 5 years worked alongside Jonathan and mainly worked with medical students, but the last 5 years pretty much ran the program and mainly worked with GPs and consultants, helping them both to work on their own communication, but also to help them to learn to become facilitators of the groups that the medical students had. Because it was pretty amazing work. We used to work with an incredibly talented group of role players, a video camera, 6 students, and we would just kind of recreate different cases that people had experienced, that we would then write, but we wouldn't script. So the student would very much, the role players were so skilled that they would actually just respond to what the student did. So you never knew where it was going to go. That's why I say seat to the pants stuff. And then when you do that with consultants and GPs who are used to working in isolation, and who now are sat with 6 colleagues staring at them whilst they're being videoed. That was unbelievably exciting, very, very daunting for them, and very, very high level in terms of the kind of qualities of facilitation that you needed to be able to successfully navigate those kind of sessions.
So when did you start your work as a nutrition coach? Was that while you were in the GP surgery? Or
well, I mean,
was
yes,
that?
Yes, in the sense that I focused heavily on nutrition and health behaviour change as a practice nurse, but actually working in business as a nutrition coach, that wasn't until after I left Cambridge.
Okay. And what do you mean by resilience training? Because you say you do resilience training. Is that part of your coaching, that it's the next thing that you train people to become?
Well, I do bring emotional resilience into nutrition because mindset is hugely important. And in fact, one client that I'm working with right now, we have 4 30-minute sessions in the month, and we've probably spent, I should think we've spent at least 20 minutes of every session so far on my. So, everybody's different. Everybody needs different focus. So yes, I do bring the emotional resilience into that. But the emotional resilience training is actually going into corporates or at the moment online and delivering workshops that look at, for example, one I'm doing tomorrow, what emotional resilience is, what stress is, how stress affects individuals and the team, looking at how understanding that we're only responsible for our own responses and how that changes things in terms of building your emotional resilience when you actually really take that on board. And then looking at ways to increase productivity, which brings in some of my nutrition work. And also strategies for relaxation and stress management, really. So yeah.
And why did you decide to do Baughan? Was that while you were nursing, after you were nursing?
So that was in 2013. So
yeah.
Basically what happened was I was having menopausal breakouts. And if you are standing up in a lecture hall in front of 200 people, as I sometimes did, and your skin, I'd never had acne really. I really was losing my confidence. And because of everything that I knew about what you put in and on your body, I knew that I didn't want products that had harmful chemicals in them. So I tried various natural products for my skin, none of which actually helped. They felt very nice, but they didn't actually sort it out. And then I tried the Baughan's RE9 range, and that sorted it in about a week. And so I thought, I'll buy these products. And that's all I thought. I'd never in a million years envisaged myself having my own business. Although that said, I had an inkling that I'd love to coach a team. And I had an inkling that I wasn't meant to stay at Cambridge long term. I knew that I had seen some of my other colleagues. The work we did was very high level, and there were, it was not at all unusual to have 60-hour weeks. And I'd seen a couple of other colleagues who were very good at what they did, and then as they started to tire and as their concentration wasn't quite as great, they weren't quite as good. And I sort of knew I wanted to go out at the peak of my game. That I think I did know. And so I was given the skincare, tried it, loved it, said, yes, I'll buy that from you. And the person who gave it to me said, Sally, you've mentioned to me quite a few times that you'd love to find a way to go and be in Devon near your mum. And I think this might be the answer. And I will be utterly truthful and say I had a huge ego at this stage, and I said something along the lines of, if you think I've just finished a doctorate to flog lippy like an Avon lady, you've got another thing coming, or something along those lines. And she was very clever. She knew me very well, and she just said, well, just have a think about it. And for about 5 days, all I kept thinking was, Mandy is someone who I probably respect more than anybody else. Why on earth would she be suggesting this to me? And I'm almost someone who does my research. And eventually I just thought, well, I'm just going to research it. And when I researched it, what I realized was that this was definitely a way, if I worked hard, that I could get down to Dublin to be near my mum, that this was a way I could coach a team. That actually this was an unbelievably equitable way for people to be successful. And the other thing I should say is I had just kind of begun to get a inkling, although nobody had spoken to me about it, that I was probably hitting my glass ceiling, and that my boss had been abroad a lot of the previous year, and I'd been running the department, and he had suggested that he might retire the following year. And somebody had said to me, I think the dean will want a doctor to replace him. And that's actually what happened. So about a year after I started my Arbonne business, the dean called me in and said, Sally, we think you're brilliant at your job, but I'm sure you'll understand that a nurse can't do a doctor's job, which of course now, is pretty surprising.
That's
But at the time, I just sat there and I went, this is why I started an Arbonne business.
Yeah.
It was a real moment of clarity for me. And it is one of the things that I absolutely love about Arbonne, is that there's no glass ceiling. There's no limits to what you can achieve if you're willing to work hard.
Vinny.
And if you are coachable, you can achieve a lot.
Yeah.
So essentially, that's why I started. What I've had from it, I would say, apart from the personal development, which has been absolutely huge, I've gone from being a glass half empty person to a glass half full. But what I would say I've had from it more than anything is more recognition in my Arbonne business than I had in the whole of my nursing career, which is quite sad, really.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah. So do you find all your 3 areas that you're in now, your coaching, your nutrition coaching, your resilience training, and your Arbonne, all intermingle together?
Absolutely, because my main focus with my Arbonne business is helping brides to flourish by having healthy habits for mind, body, and skin. And that absolutely, the emotional resilience, nutrition, and the Arbonne skincare and nutrition as well. So those 3 just come together absolutely beautifully. In terms of the emotional resilience training, I bring in the nutrition coaching into that. I don't bring in Arbonne into that. And with the nutrition coaching, I do bring in elements of Arbonne, but absolutely bring in the emotional resilience. So yeah, they're all interlinked. And I kind of feel like anybody who works with me has the benefit of my nursing career as well. Whilst I would never make, I would never make recommendations as a nurse. I'd always say to someone, go and have a chat with your doctor. But I obviously bring that expertise with me in the consultation. So yeah.
And I suppose that's it, having the nursing background, you've got the respect with what you're doing.
Yes, I think people say, they say things like, wow, nobody's ever explained it quite like that before. When I, for example, explain how the Arbonne nutrition program works or whatever, I explain the science behind it, basically. And I think that, having the ability to do that whilst not making any health claims is really helpful.
So are there any questions that the audience wants to ask Sally? They've all gone quiet. So
Yeah, very, very interesting, but I don't think I have any questions. It's fascinating though. For me, I'm hypothyroid and I'm perimenopause, so I completely get what you say about menopause. It's already been hard for me, so yeah, my nutrition's not good, and I know to be better. So it's making me stop and think, because I've been thinking lately I must do something about what I'm eating, because I'm getting overweight and with the lockdown as well. So it's a bit of a kick up the bum, which is needed.
I'm very happy to have a chat with you, Kay, if you'd like to have a chat. You know, no, what's the word? No obligation. If you want to just have a chat, that's absolutely fine.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind.
So Roger, you got a question? I know you came in late.
Yeah, sorry, I have had some IT problems, so I had to sort that out. I just think it's really interesting that you managed to combine, I've just got the last end of it, 3 different things, because I'm kind of doing something similar as well. And I think, I mean, I only got the last end of what you said. So you do Baughan, nutrition, and you've been a nurse, is that right?
Yes, so I'm an emotional resilience trainer, a nutrition coach, and an Baughan consultant, and my background is nursing.
Sorry, one second. Oh, one second. I'm gonna have to come back to you in this. Come back to you in a second.
Have you got any questions, Mandy?
Yeah, I would say I have. I find that really great, Sally, that you was working as a nurse and then going into nutrition. Yeah, I suppose I go up and down with my methods of how I eat too, with my eating situations, my eating problems. But I suppose it's the way one feels, yeah. How the brain is working. When you don't have enough food, then I have the tendency to be more down, yeah. And yeah, so it's a big subject for me, which has been following me most of my sort of life here in Germany. With eating problems and wanting to be thin, but then I'm happy being as I am, but then one is not happy, and so I think it all starts in the head. And
the other thing that I think we don't give nearly enough attention to is actually hydration. And I really think that can make a big difference with mental health. You know, if you think that the brain is 3% water, something like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we're dehydrated when we wake up in the morning, then, and if we don't, rehydrate, then the cells are dried out and they're not going to function effectively, and we're not going to perform cognitively, and that's going to then have an impact on our mood. So it's very, very interesting, I think, and I actually think we don't give nearly enough emphasis to hydration.
Thank you.
Suraj,
I'm back, sorry.
you're back. Right?
This IT problem's driving me crazy. Okay, yeah, so you were talking about 3 different things, Baughan, nutrition, and emotional resilience trainer. Like, but you all, seems like you're all in the same kind of category, is that right? Around health. Okay, that's cool, because I think Karen asked the question, are you managing to pull them together and talk about it? Whereas I'm doing something similar, but I talk about health, wealth and training, so I do 3. So but you're kind of doing that as well through your coaching and mentoring, I guess. But I've used training as one of my categories because I used to teach as well. So and I think my challenge has been that every time, when you're talking to people about your business, they keep, and And if you're speaking to a coach who's trying to coach you, they keep telling me one thing all the time. So, you know, and you got to stick to one thing. But I'm looking at it from a holistic point of view because I'm trained as a beauty and holistic therapist. So it's quite interesting to hear about somebody else talking about doing 3 different categories and pulling it together, because that has been a huge challenge for me. But I've decided to brand as my name, and then I'll have the different categories, which is quite interesting.
So do you do your training around beauty?
Well, I do nutrition because I'm with a company where we have nutritional products as well.
Right.
And we have like the expert coming in and doing all the talks, so I don't really need to do the talks. And then my training, I can do beauty or I can do business, so it's one or the other.
Right.
As well. So, and that's like creating wealth as well. So it's quite interesting though that you've managed to pull the 3 together. But I've always been on the journey, holistic journey of looking after you as a whole, because of my experience of teaching beauty, teaching dancing, teaching online marketing, because there's quite a lot of different categories. But as a whole, looking at your body from inside out. And I find most coaches tend to talk about that anyway, because when I've even looked at what Karen's doing, I know you're talking about dealing with problems, but people have lots of different problems. It's not just to do with the body, it's obviously to do with the mindset. It's just it's obviously to do with whatever's going on in your life financially, your relationships. So it's all a combination. So it's quite interesting because I do believe your body will, and it's recognizable. Your body will resonate what's going on with your environment, whatever's going on with your life circumstances, your emotions. You know, and it has a huge impact, absolutely huge, and we can't ignore that.
No, it's things like having plants in your working environment, isn't it? I mean, you know, they remove something like 86% of the toxins in the air.
Yeah.
Things like that, you know, people don't.
Yeah. And you know, I've got people who are big advocates for going organic, and you know, I mean, I put a Facebook, and Mandy commented on it as well. You know, like growing my fenugreek in the garden. It's grown like 6 inches long and high, sorry. And it was just like the fact that I'm moving more towards that is amazing. It's so interesting, and to have, you know, the right water, the right environment, you know, like even all this Wi-Fi and everything which we're surrounded by, and I think it's just has a huge impact. So it was just quite interesting to hear that you have combined 3 different categories, and it's just an observation to be fair. We can't ignore that, you know. The environment makes a huge impact, especially now, being in the house and doing what we're doing and under the circumstances. I don't like to focus on it too much, but you know. And the amount of things I've also like researched on myself, definitely about you're talking about emotions and resilience training. I mean, wow, those are really cool words to put together. You know, I think it's fantastic. It's amazing because it affects your emotions, doesn't it? Everything that's going on around you. So, you know, it's brilliant what you're doing.
Thank you.
So is there any way that we can help you further, Solly?
I think just help me spread the word.
Yeah.
If you know any brides, or if you know any bridal boutiques, or makeup and hair artists, or wedding planners, I'm looking for connections to them always. Brides themselves, and anyone you know who is perhaps struggling with, you know, who's finding that whatever approach they're using to try to lose weight or inches, you know, isn't working for them. I'm all about helping people to build healthy habits. So it's all about that. Yes, I do have a 30-day program that makes it, simple. But, it's all about building long-term sustainable.
Okay.
Can I ask one more question?
Mm-hmm.
How important do you think is detoxing your colon? Because I've had the conversations with people before you even want to lose the weight. Sally?
I think, the R1 30-day to healthy living program, the principles of it are that you eliminate inflammatory and addictive foods, you allow the gut to rest, you allow any degree of leaky gut to heal. And the whole thing is about reducing inflammation. So yes, you absolutely need to reduce the toxic load.
So my question is then, so would you say...
But I wouldn't call it a detox.
You wouldn't call it a detox. What would you call it?
I would just say you're resting the gut, allowing it to heal. You're supporting the gut to do what it does naturally. So, if you give the gut the right bacteria, if you actually reduce the insulin resistance, if you, allow that inflammation to settle, then the gut will heal.
It's a lot of people don't really know about insulin resistance, do they? They're kind of like it's been kind of clouded over, and doctors don't even really talk about it, which is quite interesting. I think more awareness is important about that. So it's good that you talk.
Doctors and nurses get one day on actual nutrition, on on the food that we eat and the fuel and how it how it's the effects it has on the body and stuff. They spend, in the case of medical students, they spend 8 weeks learning how to assess, diagnose and treat gut disease.
Yeah.
But they don't learn anything about the fuel we put in our body. And that's it's really ironic. At Cambridge they used to have one day. And yet, if you do believe that nutrition is your medicine, then they ought to be having lots more, because they, half their patients wouldn't, for example, need to be on things like omeprazole and things like that if we were able to allow the gut to do what it does naturally.
Important, yeah. Thank you.
Okay then, well thank you very much for your time, Sally, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Spending afternoon tea with the group.
Yeah, that's very nice to meet you ladies. Very nice.
Yes,
Nice to meet you too.
me too. Really great.